alien curious, want to know more about UFOs in far north Queensland and aliens in Oz? Of course you do. Everybody does. Your secret is safe with us, okay? Well, this episode is for you. Now, I promise not to tell anyone that you've watched this, but welcome to Northern Vibe. If we've never met, I'm Matt Maloney, host and founder of Northern Vibe. This is where curiosity is cultivated. This is where discussions are held with interesting, informed people. And I'm thrilled to have two ufologists. I've really been looking forward to this one. I've got North Queenslander Thea Ormonde and Dr. Roger Stankovic. Now, Dr. Roger Stankovic is the National Director of Mutual UFO Network Australia and New Zealand, MUFON. So there is something about the question of life outside of our planet. Now, it's a question not just for eccentrics. The SETI project, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is a credible research institute that involves high-ranking, serious scientists in the search for alien life. Now, before I go any further, please like and share. We are growing. Every single one of our episodes is growing really well, and I'm really, really excited about that. But we need your help to keep up the momentum. So if you're watching this, please like and share. We're getting some really, really interesting locations where people are from. So a big hello to Townsville and a big hello to Beenleigh. Please tell us where you're from. Ask questions, make comments. We are listening to everybody out there. We've had some great suggestions from the page. Please keep them coming. And that includes suggestions for guests. So nominate someone you'd like to see on Northern Vibe. Contact me through the Facebook page. I've had a request for the Yowie Hunters in Atherton Tablelands. I can't promise that they'll come on, all right? But I promise that I am following it up with them. So for that person that's nominated them. I'm only going to do the briefest of bios for our guests because doing a full one for both of them would take too long. And we're going to find out about them during the interview anyway, as it unfolds. But first, we always have a mention in dispatches to a charity that's doing some great work. And this week, it's the Paws and Claws Cassowary Close. Now, I have Mr. David Mason from Paws and Claws on. I'm bringing him in. David, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, how are you? Thank you.
Oh, no. Look, thank you for the work that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about Paws and Claws, Cassowary Coast?
Yeah, Paws and Claws is an animal rescue. So we take in cats and dogs what are being abused or dumped or what people don't want anymore. And we get them back to used to humans again and find new homes from.
Great. Yeah. And what can people do to help Paws and Claws?
We do have people donate food up Woolies and Coles in our little boxes there, but our biggest issue is the vet fees. So any donations is very welcome. We actually have a policy where we dissect all our animals before we rehome them and microchip them. And of course, it's quite costly. So that's where we need help with.
Fantastic. And look, how would people go about making a donation? What can they do? Do they contact you through the Facebook page or do they go to your office, give you a call?
Yeah, they can contact us on the Facebook and then we can ring them personally, or they can pop in and see us. If they pop in and see us, we can actually show them around and show them what we are about. But that's the way they mostly do it, yeah.
All right, look, fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on, David. It's, you guys are doing great work there. And I must say that this is Thea's favourite charity. So well done for the nomination, Thea. And God willing, we'll speak some other time. Thanks very much, Dave.
Yeah, thank you very much too. Thank you. Bye.
Cheerio. All right. Incidentally, I have some information regards the Geminid meteor shower, which is happening tonight. So you're going to be hearing just before the outtake from our local guy from Night Sky Secrets, Mr. Ian Maclean, about that. So stay tuned. Right towards the end, I'm going to get him on. Now, about Thea Ormonde, she's a fascinating lady. And she herself has a fascination with what is out there. And I mean that in all senses of the phrase. She's a mother of two. And appropriately, I suppose, considering her interest in visitors, she works at the Cardwell Information Centre and the Heritage Centre. I assume she keeps star maps there in case of visitors from a very, very long way away. She's the organiser of the Cardwell UFO Festival, which is a growing tourism event in North Queensland's tourism calendar. She's done very well to get it on the calendar. She had her first UFO sighting very, very early. And I want to make a quick note that it's no small thing to be able to make combine passion and a passion for something that you love, and combine that with a use of something that's great benefit to the community. So I think that's really, really impressive to what Thea's done there. My other guest is Dr. Roger Stankovic. He completed his Bachelor of Science at Sydney University and later his doctorate in neuroscience there as well. He was in research, mostly on experimental neuropathy, and has published a number of papers, but he now lectures a diploma of pathology techniques at Ultimo TAFE. Now, the first question I'm going to put to the doctor is to get him to tell us, to give some context on UFOs and aliens in Australia before going to our North Queensland local. So, Doctor, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, mate, I'm genuinely thrilled about how...
I'm excited to be here as well. Look, but just call me Roger from now on because it just sounds a bit too formal with the doctor.
Okay, no worries. But just, that's cool. And Ms. Ormonde, do you mind if I call you Thea? Is that okay?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much. It's just that, you're both pretty distinguished in your own ways. And I just thought it appropriate to use titles. My dad, who I know is watching this, was really, really big on that. So, Dad, I use the titles. Okay, I'm just saying, 47, still doing what you told me to. So, Roger, could you give us some context around UFOs in Australia?
Yeah, well, we can give you the context from the MUFON point of view, and also the context from the historic point of view, with some fairly historic, very famous cases like the Valentich case where there was a guy that was flying a Cessna over Bass Strait, and he encountered a UFO, and all of a sudden, bang, he's gone. No wreckage, no nothing. And that happened in 1981. The Knowles, who were a family who were traveling in a car, and all of a sudden on the Nullarbor Plains, and their car was lifted by an alleged UFO. So there's some very famous cases that a lot of your viewers probably are familiar with. Some of them are fairly old now, but from a MUFON point of view, we've got some interesting cases, not as famous as those cases that I just mentioned, but from a contextual point of view, we've had our database here in Australia since 2000, and the database we collect all the reports that people send us around Australia and New Zealand in this database called the CMS, or the Case Management System. And in that case management system, since 2000, we've had about 1,080 cases. And so not all of those are UFO cases. They're all UFO reported cases, but not all of those are what we call UFOs when we've investigated them. And in fact, we average around about 110 cases per year, and about 20% of those are what we call unknowns. Unknowns meaning that technically it's a UFO. We can't classify it any further. We've done all our investigations, and we can't work out what it is. So, am I going in the right direction for you, or?
Oh, absolutely. That is because I know a lot of my guests have kind of commented on there, going, Matt, I love the free flowing style, but do you actually have any structure? And I assure you, I do really have structure, and I had a number of questions in regards to how the data is collected, and so it appears to me that it's people report it directly to you.
No, they don't actually. They report to the MUFON headquarters in the United States. So everyone around the world reports to this one server, I think, in the United States, and basically then they email the reports, whether they're automatically sent out to the various countries. Obviously, if they're in the States, it stays in the States. But if it's an Australian report, well, then it'll come out to us it'll come to me as an email. And then I get notified by the report in an email. And then I go to the database, open the database up, the report's there, and then I can actually do the investigation because I know there's been a new case that's been entered into the database. But the public actually enter their own information into the database. They usually Google up report a UFO if they've seen a UFO. And they might come to the MUFON website. There's other websites out there. But if they come to our website, which is MUFON.com, Basically, it'll take you to the front page. Then it'll say, do you want to report a UFO? And then you just click onto a link, and then it gives you this like a pro forma that you need to fill out in terms of your name, your address, etc., which is kept confidential. But then you talk about the sighting itself, what the location was, what the time of day was, what you actually saw. Was it an orb? Was it a disc? Was it whatever? So there's all this information. There's a lot of data points that we collect on each investigation. And that gets collected into that database. And then we go into the database, and then we contact that person, and then we usually ask them more information, because usually there's information that we still need, even though they put quite a bit of it in the database to start off with.
Yeah, well, so quite clearly, it's not just accepted when someone kind of calls in. There is an investigative process. And can you
definitely.
Can you briefly give me some idea of that process and how it's through?
Yeah, so basically, say for example, you put in you saw a UFO, you were smoking out in the back. Usually, people that walk their dog in the night will have a smoke at the back of their house, and sometimes see something in the night sky, and then you report it. You Google up MUFON, or you Google up report a UFO. You go into our database. It comes to us, the email, and then we call the witness up. We ask them a series of questions, or we email them initially. We say, can we call you? So we're classified as field investigators, but it's a bit of a misnomer because Australia is so large. Obviously, it's a big continent, and we can't go flying off to Queensland and Tasmania or wherever at the drop of a hat, because we're all based in various centres around Australia in our towns and cities, and basically our only means of communication is by either Skype or where we interview that person, or email or phone. Usually phone, if they allow us to phone them up. So we get more information about the sighting. We could ask them to take a photograph of where they saw the UFO. We can, once we get all the information about the time of day that they saw it, the location, etc., we can actually look up to see whether it was a satellite, whether it was a commercial aircraft. So there's various software platforms that we can use, like Stellarium, which will tell you where the constellations and the stars and planets are at a particular time during any part of the night for 3 months ago. So we can actually determine if there was a star in the location that they said they saw the UFO. And so we gather all this information. We put all of that information into the database. So there's another page, there's several pages in this database that we put all this information in. And then we accumulate all the information and determine, based on whether we have exhausted all of our resources to find out that it's actually, to try and find out, the hypothesis is there a prosaic explanation to this thing? If not, well, then we have to call it, what we call it is an unknown, inverted commas, but technically it's classified as a UFO. So it stays in the database as a UFO, and usually we get back to the witness to say that, look, we can't classify it. We've done everything we possibly can. We've eliminated satellites. We've eliminated commercial aircraft. We've eliminated any heavenly bodies. It's not an insect, not a bird, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we've come down to, we don't know what it is. So all of that information's kept in the database.
That's really interesting. Look, if someone wanted to be a proper field investigator where they could go out and check for physical evidence and stuff like that, would you kind of accept people like that? And if so, how?
Absolutely. The physical evidence is fairly rare. Ever since I've been in MUFON, I've only had one sort of like alleged landing case where I had to actually go out, and luckily it was somebody that was within 100 kilometers of where I live. So basically, I had to go to the landing site, and I had to have. But apparently, this alleged UFO had landed there quite some time ago, and had left a bare patch on the ground where the cattle wouldn't go to and grass wouldn't grow, et cetera, et cetera. But instead of well, I thought it would be too late to actually use an EMF meter or a Geiger counter or whatever. But in that instance, you'd actually go out into the field to actually have a look, take soil samples, et cetera, et cetera. So to become a field investigator, you have to actually sit an exam. So you have to pass at 80%. So what you have to do is download a manual, which is the field investigator manual. So it's there's a lot of technicalities that you have to learn in terms of actual field investigation and how to report, how to investigate a UFO. And then you sit for an exam, and you've got to pass by 80% to be competent. And otherwise, if you don't, you can't become a field investigator, unfortunately. Most people do pass with a bit of persistence. I've only had one person that's failed, but you can persist at it and, you know, just see how you go. And once you've passed the exam, you become a trainee field investigator. And then I allocate several reports to you. And then once you've done a few reports, maybe 10 or so of different types of reports, where we sometimes have hoaxes, we sometimes have, different types of scenarios. Once you've covered most of those scenarios, you then determine based on whether I feel like you're up to it, you become a fully fledged field investigator.
Whoa. I really want to lead on to you, Thea, I promise, but I got a couple of follow-up questions for that. Like, do you get a cool black suit, like if you pass the course, and like, a nickname? Because
yeah, you get a badge, so you got a.
You get a badge.
You get a little badge, yeah. So it's quite neat. And
I want a black suit. I'm sorry, like I'm not coming across unless I get a black suit.
Well, you want to become Men in Black or something?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And look, I'd imagine you do get quite a few people trying to actively debunk you, to kind of like, yeah, we reported this and it was complete codswallop. And so
usually we can pick that up fairly easily. We had recently had, I can't go into the case because it's a bit confidential, but okay. we had a photo of the surface of the moon, and my field investigator said, we need to determine how far this object is off the surface of the moon. And I said, well, what equipment did this guy use to take the photo? Because, how could you get a photo of something on the surface of the moon from Earth unless you had something extraordinary? So there were a few, niggling questions that I had, and a few red flags had gone up. And basically, I said, no, this is a hoax, or this is somebody trying to pass information that's not theirs, it's a third party. So usually we can nip them in the bud. It is embarrassing if you let a hoax through and you report it as an unknown, and then your reputation's gone down the drain. So we have to be very careful, and we have to be skeptical with all the stuff that we receive, all the reports we receive.
Absolutely. Just ask the chaps who did all those those scientific questions on Uri Geller and kind of passed.
Yeah, that's right.
That destroyed their careers, and I got to say, rightfully so. Look, before I move on to Thea, because I'm just aching to hear about her personal experience. Any statistics for Queensland, especially in the north?
Okay, so I did look at the statistics. So we had 70 cases in Brisbane right throughout since 2000, about 14 in the Gold Coast. So that's where the main sightings are, where the main population is, the population density. And we had a couple of cases in Mackay, 3 cases in Townsville, about 9 in Rockhampton. And I'm sure we've had cases from the interior, but I'd have to actually go through each town to find out, whether anyone's lodged their report, but I know there have been. But as I said before, it's usually the bigger cities that usually give the bigger numbers, simply because of the population density.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of makes total sense. Yeah, thank you very much for your patience. But I can say with some degree of confidence that you probably found finding out about just how these things are verified as interesting as I did. Look, I understand that you've had some experiences, Thea. Could I impose on you to tell me about them?
Yeah, sure. So my first experience was when I was 7 years old, and I was camping with my family, and some also our family friends. There was a couple of families all camping together, and I was staying up late around the campfire with my parents and also the adults of the other families. And we were over on one of the islands out here from Cardwell on Garden Island, and we used to go over every Easter weekend. That was just a traditional family thing that we did for many years. And this one particular night, we all saw this massive ball of light fell into the ocean and then left again. So it fell in for probably, I would think, I mean, I was 7 years old at the time, but I would think it would have only been about a couple of minutes, and then it left again out of the ocean. And, you know, I remember my parents and their friends talking about it through, like, into the night, and then they spoke again the next morning, and the adults in the other families refused to ever speak about it again. And there's still families that live here. They are still a family that live here in Cardwell, and they to this day refuse to talk about it with me. They just said, we don't want to know about it. We're just not interested. My mother did send a letter to, I think it was the weather, something to do with the weather station, to see if there was anything, you know, that they, like a weather balloon or something they'd set off. And she got a letter back saying that there was nothing happening at that time. So that was my first, I guess, experience. And then probably every decade, I would think I've seen something similar, but it's always been a falling light and then a rising light that I've seen. Some of it's like quite far away, sometimes it's close. One time was when I was driving in the car. It was actually with my husband, and it's interesting because he also, at the time, I'd said to him, you see that there? And he's like, yes. And then we got home, and he said he couldn't remember it. So, so that was a bit disappointing because he was actually, he witnessed it with me. So, and then there's other people in town have seen what we have coined as the Cardinal Lights. For many years, people have seen these two lights that go parallel across the sky, and then all of a sudden they just shoot up into the sky.
The Cardwell Lights. Oh my God.
That's what we've coined them. I don't know. We've claimed that.
Holy min.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And look, just to explain my personal take on this, I'm skeptical but open-minded, and fundamentally that's the scientific method. Yeah. I'm sure I'm almost going to call you Dr. Stankovic there. I'm sure Roger would agree with me that really that's how science kind of works. That's how rationality works. Really, you have a thesis, and then you're skeptical about it. You try and pull it apart. And when I ask you these questions, it's in the vein of someone who's skeptical but open-minded. All right. So I'm not. I swear to God, I'm not judging you. Mm-hmm. I just want to dig a little bit deeper in this. Okay. And so it is a bit of a hard question, but are there any possible other explanations for what happened to you?
I think they're probably. I think many people could say it was, you know, like the min lights are with gas and different things, optical illusions and different things like that. And I honestly, I have no idea what it is that I saw. I have no idea. And I call it an experience and unexplained simply because I can't explain what it was.
Yep. And look, that's fair enough. That's, you know, there's nothing, and I don't like to use the word crank, but that, you know, there's nothing crankish or you know, too unusual about that. Was there any, it seems to me that there just would have been a vision in the sky. So physical corroborative evidence on the earth would have been difficult. But is there any other corroborative evidence there? Like, did any, you know, okay, your husband didn't remember seeing it, but did anyone else report it around the same time or anything else like that?
There was one, it wasn't, I actually didn't witness it, but it was a similar sighting to what I'd seen. I remember it was actually at one of the UFO festivals that we had in our sea files. People were sharing stories, and there was one gentleman got up and said that it happened to be a couple of, I think it was 3 or 4 nights before the UFO festival, and he said that he'd seen this light, which had done the same thing, had come along, gone down sort of into the ocean, and gone back up again. Now that was, I saw that when I was 7 years old. I've just turned 50. So that's what, 43 years ago. And the festival in which this was shared, I think it was the 2015 festival. So he got up and spoke about what he saw. And then it was so interesting because two other couples got up and said that we saw that same thing, but they hadn't actually shared that information with each other. So there were three separate people that had seen the same thing on the same night, but hadn't shared it until that day with each other.
Well, look, I'm sure Roger would agree with me. Fundamentally, to get a degree of credibility with these things, it's about getting it reported and investigated. But that leads on to a really interesting question. Tell me about the sea files.
Okay. So the UFO festival came about. It just organically came about in 2014. Cardwell commemorated 150 years of white settlement. And as a town, back in 2010, we all had a bit of a town meeting and decided that we wanted to, have a bit of a shindig. And we had a town meeting to work out what is it that, how do we want Cardwell to be represented? So initially we thought we were just going to do a weekend event. So we had all these butcher's paper on a wall, and we're writing down all these different ideas. And from it, I remember looking at the wall thinking, we've got too many ideas to jam pack into one weekend. So then we decided what we'd do is we'd have a series of events throughout the year. And hot off the press, one of the residents had actually seen the Cardinal Lights, which of course sparked up the conversation again about the Cardinal Lights. Now that town meeting was only meant to go for about, probably I think 3 hours we'd worked out that we were going to do. And it was close to 6 hours. And most of it was taken up with people speaking about what they'd seen or what they'd heard their parents talk about, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunties. And I was sitting there and I remember thinking, if we've got this small group of people talking about this, there's got to be heaps of other people talking. And it was actually then when I really, because I hadn't actually shared my own experience much beyond my own family at that stage. And then I realized that if we're going to have a UFO festival, we have to have the fun and quirky, and we have to have a section for for people that have a genuine interest in UFOs. So that's how we have the two components of the festival.
I think that is so cool because I've actually been to a number of public meetings, and I call it the what this town needs, because you always get this what this town needs.
Yep.
What this town needs is, and for someone to stand up and go, what this town needs is a UFO festival.
Yeah.
and then being able to sell it and have everyone else go, yeah, she's right. What this town does need is a UFO festival.
It has taken a while to convince some of the people, though. Some people still aren't real keen with having the UFO festival in town. But the way I've tried to market it is that we have the fun and quirky, plus we have the serious side of it. So I'm trying to balance it out so everyone's happy.
Believe me, I know exactly how you feel like doing this interview. But I genuinely think that's cool because there's so many aspects. There's so many aspects to this phenomenon. Like, you've got the, and I feel like I've got Mulder and Scully here. Like, although they're kind of like, there's a gender reversal there, Roger is the, well, let's
investigate.
let's investigate, and you've
believe me,
believe it.
I never watched the X-Files once. Believe it or not, I don't know why, but
it's a great show. I love it. I really, I thought it was absolutely fantastic in the 90s. Mind you, I only watched about 3 or 4 episodes because I didn't have a television where I lived at the time. But look, I'll sort of I'm going to move back to Roger now, Thea, if that's okay.
Yep.
And look, I kind of, I asked, just to give some context for my readers. So I emailed Roger and I said, well, we're going to want some stats, some facts and figures. I want you to give the intellectual context here. I want you to give credibility to this argument. Thinking, that he would be the Scully. He'd just come in and do that. But in the email, he replied, and I'm going to quote this: I can give you figures, talk about my experience and what's going on currently in the UFO field. Okay, so he's had a personal experience. It's a highly complex field of study, agreed? And it permeates deep into the very nature of our civilization. Now, if that doesn't cultivate your curiosity, Mother of God, you need an interest implant. Roger, you've had a long interest in UFOs. Tell me about your experience. How did you get into this?
Well, I got into it when I was a teenager. I was probably around 14 or 15, and I was living on a property out near where Badgerys Creek Airport is. I know you're banana benders, so you probably don't know where Badgerys Creek Airport is, but it's a new airport that's going to sort of like take over from Mascot. So my parents had a farm out there that we only just sold it recently, but I was quite a bored teenager, and I had to occupy myself with things to do. And I would often go down the paddock and go down to the bottom dam and skip stones on the water and whatever. Anyway, this evening, it was sort of like, could have been around about this time of year, November, December sometime. I went down to the bottom dam. It was a 25-acre property, so quite a large property with a farmhouse near the main road. Went down to the dam, started to, just muck around there, and starting to get twilight, and I saw this light coming in from my left field of view. Didn't think much of it. I thought it could be a plane. I don't know. All of a sudden, it starts to get larger and larger in terms of size. And it's about 300 meters in front of me, quite large, about quarter of the size of the moon. And it stops right mid, it just absolutely stops and hovers. And I'm thinking, what on earth is that? I'm thinking, it's not a plane, it's not a helicopter, not a meteorite. What on earth is it? And then it does this crazy maneuver as if to say to me, this is what I am. I'm something from another civilization, and I'll prove it to you because I can do this crazy maneuver. And then it shoots down the back of a hill and lights it up, and I just get I just ran away from the spot because I was as scared as hell. It really frightened the crap out of me. I didn't turn around to see what it was. I just had to get out of there because I just thought, oh, this is something so weird. And I was really quite skeptical about UFOs when I was a kid. I thought they were just science fiction. But after that day, I thought, oh my God, there's something else in this universe that's just completely, we don't know about. And it was just a sort of like a moment which opened my mind to something that I'd never thought I'd ever, be open to. Sort of like an epiphany, so to speak. Mm. But that really piqued my curiosity, and then I started reading books, magazines like crazy. My sister had a UFO magazine that a book that she had lying around, and I just quickly got it and thought, oh, what's this about? Is it something similar to what I've seen? And I just kept on reading and reading and reading, and it just the more I read, the more it seemed to me as if this phenomenon was real, because the accounts in the books were so real, with a lot of data and not crazy people talking about rubbish. It was absolutely so. I mean, everyone's encounter, and we're talking about people like presidents of the United States that have had UFO sightings. We're talking about astrophysicists. We're talking about even down to the general, civilian who's seen a UFO. We've all got to take into account that everyone's brain is a very good machine in being able to identify things. We're not like cameras. We can, where you can have lens flare and things like that. But when a person sees something in the sky, your mind's like a computer. It runs through all the permutations and calculations, and you can usually say with a certain amount of confidence, yes, that is a plane, or this is something very unusual. I don't know what it is, but it's behaving quite unusual.
Mm. Wow. So that was obviously a kind of Damascene moment, if I can use that analogy. Look, did you believe in UFOs before that?
No, I didn't. But I sort of I don't know. I had panic attacks when I was a kid, and every time I saw something on TV that related to aliens or UFOs, so I'd have a panic attack. And I sort of think, I don't know why, but even something like Marty the Martian, you know, the cartoon and stuff like that. Programs like I suppose what's that one? The science fiction thrillers and stuff like that about UFOs used to always frighten me. I don't.
You're lost in space.
Yeah, that used to sort of like really give me the heebie-jeebies at some. I mean, it wasn't really that bad in terms of you know, fear factor, but you know, that things like movies about UFOs or whatever. There was a program, but I can't remember the name of it now. That used to really give me panic attacks just watching it. But anyway.
Wasn't Leonard Nimoy, was it? I used to love that. But anyway.
No, not Star Trek. No, it was something else.
No. In Search Of. I'm pretty sure he did a couple of UFO things there.
Well, he did look a bit scary, but anyway.
Yeah. Oh, man. Leonard Nimoy. I love that guy. Look, who did you first tell? Let's delve into that specific first, the Maclean experience for you. Whom did you first tell?
Well, as soon as I got home, I went into the kitchen. I remember I asked my sister about a couple of years ago. I said, "Do you remember?" This is my elder sister. "Do you remember that time when I saw the UFO down in the paddock?" And I rushed into the kitchen. She goes, "Oh yeah, I can never forget it." She said, "You looked like a ghost. You looked white, and you were sweating, and you were really just terrified." And so she remembers the actual day that it happened. And so I just came in and told everyone just hysterically, you know, so I saw a UFO and was quite alarmed by the whole thing. And then I went and told kids and some of my mates at in high school, and some of them sort of like said, "Oh yeah, I believe you," or, you know, "You're talking rubbish," you know. But that's where it all started. And I never reported the case, but I started off with family and then friends, school friends.
Mm. Well, that you know, that does cover off on a few of my other questions. You know, like how did they respond, and look, how did the response? And this is leading into a conversation that I really want to have. How did their response make you feel?
I didn't get any really negative responses to what I've sort of like repeated the story to a few people, and they obviously feel that I had seen something highly unusual, and they never really did, you know, rubbish me or anything. That's usually the response that I get, and I don't think that I've mistaken it for a meteorite or something else. And people saying, "Oh, you know, they haven't been saying that, you know, it's ridiculous. You should, you know, it probably was a meteorite or something, or, you know, a helicopter, or who knows." But I know that what I'd seen did things which nothing could have done, even now, you know. Mm. And it really, like, it was just a few seconds, and like 30 seconds in my life as a teenager, and it's sort of like just embedded in my head, and it's really just changed my outlook on everything. It's you know, life changing to a certain degree.
Well, that was, you know, one of the questions that I was going to ask. Really, is like, you know, how did this experience change your perspective on life and the universe? But Thea, I'd really like to ask you those same sorts of questions. Like, how did people respond when you first told them?
Well, I think it might be similar to, I was just thinking then when Roger was talking about his experience, because he was a 14-year-old child and I was a 7-year-old child. I think no one's really ever ridiculed anything when I've said that I'd seen anything as a 7-year-old. It's only sort of when you say that you've seen things as an adult, they say, "Oh yeah, how much do you have to drink, what you've been smoking," all that sort of stuff. But I think because when I first spoke about, and because I was with my parents, I had all the confidence in the world that we'd all seen the same thing. So because my parents had seen it, my parents' friends had seen the same thing, I didn't have a problem with judging myself as to what I'd seen. So I've always been very confident in what I've seen. And I don't know whether people just choose not to say it to my face, but I've never really had any any negativity with ever talking about what I've seen. As far as what I have divulged to people, there are things that I haven't actually spoken about, and I don't really know if I would speak too publicly about different experiences that I've had until I can work it out myself. Because I do have a belief that we as human beings are existing on a particular vibration. And I think there's a lot of other things that we can't see or experience because of the vibration that we're on, the frequency that is our reality.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a lot of things that human beings can't perceive, at least through. And look, you know, my take on this is, no, this is, I'm probably going to regret saying this because people are going to kind of like hammer me for it. I'm a great believer in the scientific method. I really deeply am. But that doesn't make me a materialist. I think, you know, there's a very different, it's very important to make the distinction between the scientific method and believing in materialism. Materialism is a philosophy. Scientific method is a method. So again, you get a hypothesis, you check it, you put it to bits, and you kind of say, well, this is, it gives you well, to use a quantum physics term, a degree of probability. And of course, the more we know about that specific sort of thing, the more you can draw that certain degree of probability in. But there's still an incredibly high amount of things going on, not just in the universe generally, but indeed, you know, in our on our Earth, and indeed in human perspective that we kind of don't know about. Like phenomenology is something that interests me deeply, and human psychology is just, I mean, our brain is, from what we know, the most complex thing in the universe, materially speaking.
In the known universe.
In the known universe, yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
In the known universe, right? Yeah, Roger. Sorry. But it's kind of true. And when I start talking like this, I'm not demeaning science. Like, I'm not dismissive of it. And when I hear anyone make the observation that science, and you know, perhaps we could get Roger to comment on this, that science has its limits. It doesn't mean that they don't believe it. It doesn't mean that they're trying to dismiss the outcome. It doesn't mean that they're kind of arguing about it. It's just an observation that as a material phenomenon, it's really, really difficult to deal in abstractions like phenomenology, psychology to a certain degree. Okay, it's true that we can measure, and I've had this discussion with, you know, some really high-flying psychologists, and they go, well, Matt, that's not really true. Like, although human behavior is not something material that you can kind of grab, there are material things that we can kind of measure about that, and I accept that. But, you know, when you come down to abstract concepts like, you know, hate, love, good, bad, right, wrong, you know, we're really, in my respectful submission, making we're hitting the limits of material science. But staying on the UFO thing, Roger, can you, as someone who is scientifically trained, and if I can kind of say this, you know, is someone who's, because I've done a fair bit of research on you, and mate, yeah, you know, I'm really impressed with the research that you've done, and I haven't read your papers, but I've seen where they are, and I've seen what you've done your research on. It seems to me that your methodology is pretty strong. How do you reconcile the scientist in you and this field that is considered crankish? You know, what do you do?
Well, I probably wouldn't have reconciled it if I hadn't seen that UFO. And I know that this field lacks, it's got data, but it lacks physical evidence from what we know. For all we know, we could have crashed extraterrestrial craft in the Pentagon or the Patel Institute, for example, or somewhere in Skunkworks or Area 51 or S4. You know, we could have material that's not available to us to absolutely prove that you know, we've had visitors and they've crashed on Earth, and we've got physical craft and bodies. we're just not privy to it. We're just basically there's this stonewalling that the government's doing across the world. Maybe not even the government. It's the cabal, I suppose, that is controlling things that the government's doing, that doesn't allow us to see this stuff. So there could be physical evidence there, and but going back to your question, how do I reconcile it? I suppose that the sighting has started this passion in me that I want to work out what it is, and we still can collect data based on what personal experiences people have had, and we can, as you said, look at the hypothesis, look at the null hypothesis that it's a prosaic object, and then try and work out, can we actually work out what it is? Is it a prosaic object? If it is, what is it? If we can't work out what it is, well then, what is, do we, pigeonhole it as an unknown or as a UFO? We can only just collect data and then do this sort of thing until one day there's disclosure, and it probably won't be, it'll probably just be trickle disclosure, where, and this is what's happening now with the videos from the USS Nimitz and the Roosevelt and a few other things that are coming through now and actually being released by the Pentagon.
This is where I start to kind of part ways with a lot of my brothers and sisters, I suppose I should say, in the UFO community. And as I said, it's not that I can't conceive, like I am not dismissive of these things. It's a massive universe, limited admittedly, but massive nevertheless. And I think it's entirely possible, I don't know if I'd use the word probable, but it's entirely possible that there is life out there, and it decreases. Okay, saying that there's life doesn't mean there's intelligence life. I mean, there may very well be some slime mold.
I think it's highly improbable if there isn't life out there.
Yeah, and look, I will grant that, mathematically speaking, but let's talk about the government cover-up. And here's my reasoning, and I'm just throwing it out there, all right? And again, this is from a respectful, critical friend. Does the government keep secrets? Yes. I mean, I've caveated personally information. I'm now just a public servant, but until relatively recently, I was a police officer. So, do we have information that we caveat and hide from the public? Yes. Yes, we do. Is there rather large amounts of that information? Yes. Yes, there is. Stuff that people are never going to get their hot little hands on. But that's normally around well, protecting a source, or protecting our methodology, or something else like that. Now, the only doubt, so I kind of I wonder why the government would cover all of this up, except this. And here's the so I want you to think the Matt reasoning here. We got the yin and yang figure. You got the got the dark, and you've always have the spot of light in the darkness, and you'll have the spot. So I always allow myself that reasonable doubt, and I try and question my own reasoning. It's something I try very, 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 very hard to do. And the analogy that I'm going to use is this. I promise I won't give you the long version. This will be as quick as I can possibly make it. I work a lot in the Indigenous space, and I worked in Arakoon for some time. And when you're up there, we were the vast majority of our work was trying to protect people from hurting each other. Like and look, I'm actually mixed race, but I don't do the whole identity politics kind of thing. It's not something I'm into. We saw ourselves as we're going in, we're trying to stop you from hurting each other. Why are you thinking of us like the bad guy? Why are you angry with me for you trying to kill someone else who you're actually pretty closely related to? And this frustration would, of course, boil over. And I remember venting one day to my sergeant. This is going back some time. I wasn't junior in my service around at this time. I had good 12, 13 years service at this time. said to my sergeant, I said, you know, we're just here to help. Like, we're just trying to stop people from killing each other. Why am I somehow being treated as the bad guy? Like, you know, cannot people see that I'm just trying to hurt, that I'm just trying to bring peace and justice and all these sorts of things. And my sergeant was really good, but he at the same time was a little dismissive. He goes, well, Maloney, you need to kind of think of it like this. You're just thinking of it from your point of view. You're thinking of it as like someone who understands this and where you're coming from. He goes, imagine if we were sitting outside. He goes, I want you to imagine that a UFO came flying in, like, beep, 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 and landed right in front of us. He goes, what would you think? And I think, oh my God, that would blow my mind. That would seriously blow my mind. He goes, that's right. He goes, now imagine this. The door opens on the UFO and two people of a completely different color, green, whatever it is, purple, gray, whatever. They come walking out and they stand in front of you. So this thing has come from the other side, like this inconceivable place. And he goes, and you're familiar with aliens. Like, you know, you understand the concept that there may be something out there. Is there anybody out there? And this thing has landed and these humanoid beings have kind of come out. What would that do? And I'd be like, that would just blow my mind squared. Like the landing would blow my mind. That would be like blow my mind squared exponentially. He goes, that's right. He goes, now imagine this. Now imagine they kind of like get out and say, all right, we're here to help. Everything that you think about the universe and the way that you think is wrong. So if you're a theist, it's like, look, we forget about the reasonable doubt thing. There's no such thing as God, okay? It's beyond reasonable doubt. We have conclusively proven there is no God. Or if you're a Dawkinsite materialist, it's like, yeah, God, you know the angels thing? That's us. Okay, like we helped create the universe, all right? Like we were there. And, you know, whatever it is, religious paradigm you want to kind of, theist paradigm you want to frame that from. And, oh, by the way, everything, the way that you frame your family, wrong. The way that you create wealth, wrong. The way that you distribute wealth, wrong. The way you do this, everything you ever thought about the universe was wrong. What would that do to you psychologically? And I kind of sat there and go, well, no, like, you know, maybe I'd go mad, maybe I'd get violent, maybe I'd, you know, maybe drink. I don't know, maybe I'd do all those things. I'm not sure, Sarge. Like, I'm just not sure what I would do. And he goes, that's right. And how that is related to this concept is, I can get the idea that the government would cover things up to protect people. And I understand, I think better than most people, I understand just how deeply traumatic psychologically it would be. And there would be a lot of well-meaning people out there going, we just can't let the public know. We just can't do that. I'm sorry, look, we can have this knowledge, but no one else can. Like, we're the only kind of people who can do that. I get that. But I still kind of think that, you know, if there was this access to the technological aspects and the aspect of knowledge, I think that would win out against a lot of, especially, and here's the rub. Like if the landings had have happened in Soviet Russia or, you know, some other place where there is a deep distrust of the public, like a deep distrust of the scum that they're looking after. It's like, because that's how totalitarian governments think. They see people as people to be ruled over. Democracies, at least in theory, work on trust. It's like, well, you guys elected us. You guys put us in these positions. You know, you trust us, we trust you. Democracy works on this really fundamental idea of trust. So I don't know. And I'm not saying they wouldn't, because I've just explained my reasoning. But I don't know if there would be a conspiracy that deep for that long that could be held. Because again, I know a little bit about too, and like, you know, the police are an honest organisation. You know, I've never seen anything actively corrupt where people hold back information. Where people make up narratives, lie completely. but I have seen incidents. Sorry, I should withdraw that actually because I'm still subject to. But I know of some times when people might be tempted to hold back information to keep a narrative intact. I get that. I do. You know, I really get it at a really deep level. So I don't know, Roger and Thea. I don't know. So I'm really happy to throw this out. And I'll get Thea to sort of like comment on the conspiracy thing, like why and how it would happen. And then I'll get Roger to talk. Thea?
Well, that's very interesting. Very interesting. And I do agree with, I also can't understand. Well, I can to some point, just like you do, Matthew, that I can understand why some information would be suppressed. I guess it just comes down to the faith that the leaders would have within the mass population of the world as to what the reaction would be, because you really don't know what the reaction would be. If let's just say that all of the leaders of the world got together and said, okay, I think it's time that we're going to let the public know that there are actually other life forms out there, and they've been visiting us for many, centuries even, or decades. They've been sharing their intelligence with us, and that's how we've evolved as human beings. If you throw all of that information out to the masses of the population of the world, I don't really think you'd be able to control the reaction of what would happen. It would have to be really trickled out and very well orchestrated.
Hmm. So fundamentally, you kind of disagree with, oh, no, sorry, you actually, I withdraw that. You kind of agree with the idea that the distrust of
it is. And I think, historically, you look back at the human race historically, they're not a very trusting race, species of animals on this planet. So if I was in a position that I had all of the knowledge of whether or not there were aliens and they were coming to visit us and they generally did want to help us, I don't actually know if I would have enough faith in the whole of the population to keep it together.
Wow. So
when that information came out.
Thea, you would be part of the conspiracy. Fundamentally, that's that.
Yeah.
Of conspiracy.
Yeah. Well, I think, it would be very tricky, wouldn't it? It would be a very, very tricky thing to just publicly put it all out there of everything that's going on.
Okay, Roger.
If there's things going on.
If allegedly.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with Thea. I think it's something that's going to have to be very well controlled and orchestrated. But leaks have come through. Don't forget that. We've had many, many leaks. And the US government and many governments use their black budgets to actually keep secrets. And millions upon trillions of dollars go into keeping secrets. Not so much, other things like projects that they're working on, if they're looking at craft or whatever. But it may even be something to do with the darker aspects of the phenomenon where you have cattle mutilations and even human mutilations. So where do you go with stuff like that? Where you, if we do declare that they are here, they've been here for a while, but there's a little aspect about what they're doing, which we haven't really told you. And obviously there's, people saying they've been abducted and whatever. So yes, that's true. Millions of people have been abducted against your own will. It's giving a acknowledgement that this is actually happening. And also basically we have been, they have been mutilating the cattle. And even the occasional human. So what do you do with, a situation where if you dig deep enough, you'll get the really darker aspects of the phenomenon?
Yeah, so it could be the case that we, even after a considerable amount of contact, we're unsure of the intentions of unsure of the intentions, or it might even it could be like human beings, that there is no consensus of intention, or there is indeed good intentions with bad outcomes. And let's look at the you know, Thea, I'm pretty sure you're going to disagree with me on this. That's okay. Like, friends can disagree. Like, because, you know, really we're talking about colonization. Yeah. You know, and the colonization of Australia is incomplete. Like, I've worked in Arakoon, Lockhart River, and Thursday Island. So I kind of laugh when people say, well, we've been here for 200 years. No, we've been in Sydney for 200 years. There's been settlement in Arakoon, I believe, and I might stand corrected on this, I think it was 1901 or 1903. And my first stint in Arakoon, I met some people who were babies, like they didn't remember the coming of the white man, but they were alive when that happened. So there's this, you know, there was, you know, a massive cultural change in their day. And I won't go in because I had a brilliant conversation with an elder who's now deceased, so I can't even say his name, but about worldview and about precisely these sorts of things and how it kind of changes things. So I do have some understanding of that. And again, like, you know, we don't really know, you know, maybe they're surprisingly like us, where they're really well intentioned, where they kind of turn up and go, hey, you know, we're here to help. And again, this is where you and I think are going to agree there. I think colonization by and large was positive. That's not that I don't, like, I've stood in places, like I've seen skulls with holes in their heads, and I've spoken to people who were there when the Native Mounted Police came charging in to, that was kind of this. That's first-hand knowledge. You just can't. I can't deny the evidence of people who I'm quite sure were neither lying nor mad when they told me these things. But again, I kind of think the colonial experiment was worth it. And at the bottom of it, and here's the rub, here's the weird thing, here is the strange thing. When you kind of say to people, we can introduce this information that may be absolutely mind-blowing, that might make a lot of you mad, a lot of you bad, and a lot of you dependent on substances, but we're still going to do it because we have a basic trust in your ability to do that. You're actually appealing to the highest. You're appealing to the highest. And that's what democracy does. People with Down syndrome have the right to vote. Mm-hmm. And I don't see that as a bad thing. Like, I've actually, when I lived in China and Inner Mongolia, and I had some Chinese people going, yeah, well, the whole thing, and one of them was really dismissive. He goes, you allow people with, like, Down syndrome to vote. And I'm like, you're not getting it. That's our greatest strength. Mm. That's not a weakness. That's a strength. That's who we are. We look at, we look at the entire paradigm, the entire pattern of reality, and we accept that, we got people who are intelligent, people who aren't. We got people who are educated and people who aren't. We got people with certain life experiences, and they're going to vote this way. We're going to have people that genuinely think that, Adolf Hitler had it right. We got people that genuinely think that Karl Marx, dude, man, that guy was spot on. The spot body count, it was like, and we tolerate that. We just go, no, well, you can say whatever it is you want, and you think of what's at the bottom of that. It's a deep trust, a deep trust of the human condition, and a deep trust, an understanding of flaws, an understanding of stupidity, and still allowing it to happen. So that's why I wonder. That's, for me, that's the dot that's the white dot in the black fish, or the black dot and the white fish of doubt in my mind as to why they would kind of do this, especially over a number of administrations. So if this has been happening for a long time, and not just all the conspiracy theories focus on America. God bless them. God bless that country. I just love it, But it's not as if the United Kingdom hasn't had it. Like, this is a kind of like, and really, depending on how you define alien incursion. So let's just say, and I'm not saying I agree with this, okay? This is just a discussion point. Let's just say that, everything that we've been told about, well, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, I can kind of say that without too many people getting angry. All of these gods fighting in the sky and using these really weird weapons, maybe that was aliens. Maybe that was human beings looking at kind of stuff and going, wow, that's aliens. Can I get you to hold that thought and cognate on this just for a couple of minutes? Because I've got Mr. Ian Maclean from an excellent organisation that I absolutely love. And oh my God, we've already gone over the hour and I didn't even know. I'm normally really good at watching time. I want him to tell us about the Geminids, because it's so, and I swear to God, I didn't do this on purpose, but there's actually a magnificent meteor shower coming up in Australia that's viewable from here. And I really wanted an expert to come on and quickly talk about it. So we're going to take, I suppose you could call this an interview. Roger and Thea, do you mind keeping going, incidentally, or do you want to wrap?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, keep going.
Great. Okay. And I hope my listeners out there, of course, drop out anytime you want. I'm going to bring in Mr. Ian Maclean from Night Sky Secrets. Hello, Ian. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Ian?
Yep, gotcha.
I got you 5 by 5. Look, thank you for being so patient. For our listeners, when I was going to do this close to the outtake, but this is just such an interesting conversation, and my guests are being very indulgent of me, so we're going to keep going. But I want you to tell us why we should be looking up in the next couple of days.
The Geminids meteor shower, which are our very interesting lights in the sky and probably the best ones we get all year. Upwards of 100 meteors an hour under the best conditions. More likely in the city, you're going to see maybe 20 or 30 an hour. If you're out in the country, you might see 50 or 60. The best hours are between, let's say, about midnight and 2 a.m. for the people that don't mind staying up at that time of night. But you'll see them from even about 10 o'clock at night in the northeast. Don't know how we're going to go tonight. Last night tonight is the peak of the Geminids. And I guess a lot of people don't really understand why we get meteor showers. I'll probably talk a bit about that if you like.
Yes.
Sure. So most meteor showers are the result of comets. So comets leave a trail of dusty debris behind them, which due to the solar wind is pushed out into the path of the Earth. And we sweep that debris up every year in a regular meteor shower. So we have the Orionids, the Geminids, the Taurids. As you can start to see, there's a bit of a pattern here. It's all the names of the constellations. And this is where the Gemini, for instance, that's where they appear to radiate from. So I was out early this morning, 4 a.m. and saw like 15 in half an hour. Each one's different. You can tell which meteor shower, with a bit of experience, you're looking at by the color and speed of the meteors. Most people don't have any idea how big these are. These are a bright one's the size of a pea. A regular one's the size of a grain of rice, but they're traveling at hypersonic velocities, between 30 and 150,000 kilometers an hour. So when they hit our atmosphere, they essentially ionize the atmosphere and leave this beautiful smoking trail and puff in a little puff of smoke, or a big puff of smoke if it's a big one.
Wow. That is so cool. So, and what time? Well, you said between those times tonight.
Yeah.
When is this going to stop? When is this going to end?
Look, it will taper off. Both last night and tonight are the peak of the meteor shower, and that's all around the world. Anywhere you can see Gemini, which is, well, anywhere you can see the sun, because the sun moves along the path of the planets. and through the zodiac constellations. So all you need is not to be in the direct light at the very least, and preferably in a dark spot, and just lay back, relax, and enjoy the show. Yeah, it's worthwhile. And you don't need any special tools, no telescopes, no binoculars, just a bit of patience, and see some very explainable lights in the sky.
And if people did, and I'm going to declare that I have no interest in this. Like, this is not paid. For anyone that's wondering out there, is like, is Matt getting anything from Mr. Maclean at Night Sky Secrets? The simple answer to that is no. But I am a geek, and Mr. Maclean fixes my telescope, and he does a great job. So, and that's just, hey, again, like, there's no money here.
It's what we love doing, Matt.
Yeah, he's the guy that fixes my telescope. So, look, I recommend, if you're to any of our listeners, if you're interested in Geminids, just Google it. You can jump on Night Sky Secrets website. Yep. I recommend that as well. It's got some great stuff on there. Mr. Maclean does tours. He fixes stuff. You do gold.
Yeah. Looking up, looking out, looking down. That's our motto. Because, look, I've found, like you guys are talking about, people who are curious about the world around them are naturally curious. It doesn't stop at one phenomena. If you're curious about the world around you, you're looking at everything around you. Some people are not curious and they'll just keep walking, but we're there for those people who are curious about the world around them. That's what we do. So, yeah.
Look, great, mate. Look, thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to let you go. I know you're as busy as a one-legged ballerina. So if anyone's interested, look, tonight, look up, set your alarm. It's probably worth it. If you can't do that, look, at least go out and grab a beer, head out, for 9 o'clock, and you'll probably see some cool stuff. Or set your alarm really early.
That's right.
That's the way I like doing it.
Hopefully the clouds go away.
Yeah. Look, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming on, Ian. I know you're busy. I sincerely appreciate you taking time out of your very busy day, and it's not going unnoticed or taken for granted.
No worries, and great to see you, Thea, and good to meet you, Roger.
Thanks, Ian.
Meet you too, Ian.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I'll see you later, and remember, keep looking up.
Yeah.
It's cloudy here, so we can't see anything.
Yeah, and if you see anything weird, report it. Because he wants to know.
Yes, please.
He wants to know. All right. So look, I'll get you, Thea. I'll get you to comment on those points that I raised, if that's okay.
On the what? Sorry.
On the points that I raised just before I got Ian in.
Okay. So you were talking about what were you talking about? Oh, sorry. What point?
Okay. Yeah. There are points to our conversations, I assure you. Like, is there any meaning or point really? Again, it's just about the motivation of conspiracy and
yes, the motivation. Yeah. I think it is. I think most people can draw a similarity, like you say, with the colonisation. Like, I mean, in Australia, we can. It's really quite recent, really, the colonisation of Australia. I mean, it's only 200 odd years, and that would be, I think, very similar to, let's just say, like we did have contact, and like you said, maybe our world leaders, and if that they are in contact with extraterrestrials, have an idea that they have a better way for us to exist on this planet, but it may not be in what we've come to believe is the best way for ourselves as human beings, and they might have a different idea. And I think that's why it would be very, very difficult to just have complete disclosure, because like Roger was explaining about with the cow mutilation and abductions, and what people have said have happened to them when they've been abducted. And if our governments were to turn around and say, yes, we've known this has been going on for decades, where does that leave our authority bodies with allowing that to happen to us? So it would be very difficult to work out how you could roll out disclosure.
Yeah, exactly, because the entire point of having a society, really, and authorities and the police and army and stuff like that is protection. Really, that was the initial rationalisation. And if you can't provide that, you really have no point in existing. Roger, I'm tempted to dive in deep to this, but we're already over time. There's a few other things that I kind of really want to go into. But you did mention the permeates deep into the very nature of our civilization. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, I might have gone into a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, well, I think it does, because I think it's sort of like, if there is this, this cabal that's sort of like controlling governments and whatever, and preventing us from knowing exactly what's going on, and this phenomenon is real, and it's there, it's, we've got crashed spacecraft, we've got bodies, we know they're coming here. Where am I going with this? Basically, I think that, yeah, where am I going with this? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What was your question again?
It's Northern Vibe, okay? The entire point of Northern Vibe is losing your train of thought.
It's getting late.
and kind of running deep into it. But that's okay. I kind of, because we're actually over time, and I normally don't do this. I normally really discipline. It's like, dude, we start at 6, we finish at 7, but this has been such a cool conversation. I want to ask a couple of I'll ask, I'm looking at these questions. All right. What do you think is the most interesting and compelling UFO reporting phenomenon that you've heard of? And second, what's the most compelling one that you've investigated? So one that can come from America or Kingdom or whatever, and then one that you've done personally. Do tell.
Well, I think the Rendlesham Forest incident was pretty revealing in terms of multiple witnesses. I don't know whether your viewers know about this, but in 1980 in Suffolk in England, there was a landing of a UFO craft, and it was touched by one of the military staff that were actually going out to look at it. But not only that, this happened in Christmas Eve, right, 1980. So it's 24th of December. So it was multiple witnesses. There's actually a tape of their colonel who went out and investigated it because he didn't believe it, of him speaking when he was actually witnessing the events going on. That's pretty revealing. And in terms of also being associated with the nuclear warheads, which were hidden in silos in Bentwaters at the time. So UFOs have an association with our nuclear warheads for some reason, and at that time in 1980, it was not known that these missiles were there in Suffolk, but nobody knew about them. Certainly, it was very hush hush. So that's quite an outstanding. Apart from Roswell, I'm not quite sure. I'm in two minds about Roswell. Like they say it was a mogul balloon, but then again, they lied initially. Why did they lie initially if it was just a mogul balloon? Number two, why didn't they track the mogul balloon if it was so secretive? Why didn't they track it? Why did they just let them? There's hundreds of mogul balloons that had fallen down in the desert in America. Why not pick them up? If they're so secretive, it doesn't make sense to me. There's something else to this, and I think the U.S. government's still lying about Roswell. And the one that I've investigated, well, there's a few that come to mind, but there's this one guy who captured some really interesting video of his in his car with his camera. So his cam in his car, he had one in the front, one in the back. And when he was wiping the rear window one day when he was cleaning his car, the cam was knocked upwards. And when he turned on his key, he inadvertently caught this UFO in broad daylight. And I've sent the analysis, the actual video to the United States, to Rob Spearing, who's the expert there in MUFON. And he and I can't work out what on earth this thing is. It travels like an orb. It's like an orb. It actually goes through, it actually punches holes through clouds. It's the size of a car. It's quite bizarre. And he's actually taken a lot more footage. Very bizarre. I could never work out what this object was. It's there. You can see it. It's in the video. It's zooming around like a crazy lunatic. it's an orb of something. I don't know. I've
What on earth? As you said, what on earth?
You know, it's crazy, and no matter how much I've tried, I haven't been able to identify it. That's one thing. I mean, there's other things that, you know, we haven't had any UFO crashes that I've heard of. That'd be really nice, you know, to have investigate a downed spacecraft. But then again, you'd probably have the military there before you could say, you know.
And look,
the saying is,
if one happens in Cardwell, I'm sure Thea will go out for you, but you have to give her a black suit. She's not
absolutely. I'll give you a black suit, Thea.
Yeah, okay.
I don't need a black suit. I'll just go out and
yeah, you just go out in the Cardwell, go out in the purple Cardwell t-shirt.
I'll go the purple shirt.
Good on you, mate. All right, look, we are going to wrap this up because we've gone 20 minutes over. So there's a couple of things. Roger, can you tell us, you know, really quickly about your research? Because I'm fascinated about that.
Okay, so I used to work at the University of Sydney, and I was a neuroscientist there in the neuropathology department in Blackburn Building. And what I did a lot of research on motor neuron disease. So I was looking at a mouse model for motor neuron disease. We got a model which had 2 genes that were knocked out, and we were exposing that model to heavy metals and determining whether mercury vapor that's normally found in dental amalgam when you chew actually has anything to do with the death of motor neurons. So in motor neuron disease, you have your motor neurons die off. My uncle actually died of motor neuron disease as I was writing up the thesis, which is quite crazy because there's only 1 in 300,000 people get this. So that was one aspect of my research. The other aspect was the CJD stuff, which was Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, which is an infectious protein that actually fulminates. It actually builds up amyloid plaque in the brain, and it makes you demented. So it's similar to mad cow disease, but it occurs sporadically in humans, 1 in a million. But I was the scientist that was monitoring all of the CJD cases in New South Wales and sending them to the Royal Melbourne Hospital, look at these cases. So I've seen many a brain, and I've cut many a human brain up and diagnosed a lot of these cases with the pathologist there.
How does, and I know I'm stretching this out, so I apologize to all our viewers, but I'm loving this, and I'm looking at Facebook. I'm kind of thinking that we've got one chap who's probably he's from Bundaberg, looking at this, and he indicates he's probably going to report something to MUFON. So just jump on the MUFON website and report it there. And yeah, so we've got one there. How does a protein become a pathogen? And how?
This is interesting because
because proteins are created by DNA or RNA. They don't create themselves. Well, at least, you know, to my limited knowledge, you're going to have to.
Yeah, so prions are actually normal proteins in the brain. They're actually found in what's called the pia mater. So it's just the jelly part of the brain. It's not the neuron or anything like that. And they once they become misfolded, you might have a genetic disposition or a polymorphism in your genes that enables that will cause this protein to malform or misform, and it'll recruit other proteins that are normal to be like it. And then once it gets to a certain threshold, it will actually deposit what's called amyloid protein in your brain, and then you become demented. You'll have this slow journey or quick journey even into dementia. You could be normal one day, and then 4 weeks down the track, if you've got CJD, if it's a really rapid CJD, you could die of dementia. So it's quite a bizarre disease, really, really quite a fascinating and bizarre disease. But it's the only infectious thing that's not a virus and a bacterium.
You see, that's weird. I mean,
it's very weird.
How does a protein, which is, you know, a good thing.
Well, that's what I had to be very careful.
Fundamentally, what we're made of. Yeah. How does that become pathogenic? That's
weird. It's a very unusual thing. It's the only known thing in the universe, in the known universe, that's infectious other than a bacteria and a virus. So there you go.
known universe. I love that. But look, last question. Actually, this is more of, I'm kind of setting you up here, Roger. I do apologize, but you're also a muso, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I dabble in it a little bit.
Okay. Can I play some of your music? Is that okay? Are you
You can if you like. You can play the whale if you want. This is a little ditty that we put together with in a studio with me and Adriana and a couple of musos. So it's just a cover of a well-known, I think it's 60s or 70s Australian song.
Yeah. Well, so we got a lady who organised a UFO, who did the what this town needs and managed to get that fly, which again is a bit of an achievement. And that's putting aside being a mother, which is arguably the most important job in the known universe. And well, not arguably, I would suggest it is the most important job in the known universe. And again, working at the visitor centre, I want star maps there. I want star maps.
Yep.
Okay. Do you stock in them there at Cardwell?
We will.
Okay. I'm sure if you get on the MUFON, that they can kind of help. But the point being is I've got these incredibly talented people here. So I'm going to play a really short outtake of this music. A really short bit of this music, and then we're going to go on to the outtake. So stay with us. We're kind of like we're going down. We're winding it up, but we've still got some really, really, really cool things that are happening. So hang on, just give me one moment here to do the. All right. Yeah, sharing options. Yeah. Oh, what am I doing here? All right. Incompetence squared. Hang on. Are you still sharing anything, Roger? No, you're not.
No, I don't think I am.
Okay. No, here we go. Right. All right. You getting that?
They sailed for port one morning, the weather it was fair. A gentle breeze pushed them and no one gave a care. They sang and danced and laughed at night and opened up a keg. They're out to catch the monster whale that took the captain's die. The captain said a piece of gold for he who sees me will. So bend your backs and row me, boys, and know you won't fail. So bend your backs and row me, lads, and take me to me will. Tonight we sing and dance, and tomorrow night we sail. We sail into the harbour of Proud and the Big, to show them all we captured, the monster from the sea.
Oh, you gotta love a sea shanty. I absolutely love sea shanties.
They're great, aren't they?
So if anyone is interested in Roger's work, besides he's obviously just kind of Googling, he's got a considerable Google presence. The papers are interesting. The music's out there. So that's kind of cool. We've had Night Sky Secrets on. I've really, 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 really enjoyed this interview. I've had a couple of phenomenally interesting and informative people on. And there's nothing better than speaking to an engaging aficionado. So to everyone out there, I hope you like this as much as I did. Please like and share. Every Wednesday, my colleague David Young does an excellent podcast on Podbeam. Yes, we're North Queensland State. That's Wednesday nights between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. Get the Podbeam app, have a listen. Next Monday, the 21st, I'm working on that. I've actually got, again, I'm spoiled for guests. I've got a couple of people that I'm tossing it up between. I'm not going to reveal precisely who it is yet, but I do promise that it will be interesting. So tune in to the same Matt time, the same Matt channel. And if you have tuned in to Northern Vibe, thank you very much. Roger and Thea, I'll get you to stay on for just a second more. But to all of my magnificent listeners out there, I hope you have enjoyed this as much as. Thank you very much for tuning in. You guys rock. You're making Northern Vibe. You're making Northern Vibe a presence on the internet. So, and we're going to get more professional. We're going to get better. It's all coming. Thanks very much. Keep an eye on us.